Hello dear CorelDRAW friends, welcome to this webinar about creating your own fonts in CorelDRAW X6. My name is Mo Boimers, I'm a graphics designer and illustrator, and I have had an apprenticeship many years ago, many years ago, as a sign maker, and that was the time where I first used CorelDRAW X. It was about Corel 6, I think. I have used CorelDRAW a lot there for sign making, lettering, call lettering, and stuff like that, and also learned to create fonts with CorelDRAW. There hasn't changed a lot over the versions of CorelDRAW, so yeah, it's pretty much the same stuff as the last versions. But anyway, I've managed to put together some tips and tricks and stuff like that to show you that CorelDRAW is really capable to help you creating your own fonts. I have to admit I'm not talking about typography in this webinar, since this is a very comprehensive topic which can't be covered by one webinar. This webinar will only be about how you can create your own fonts. So things like kerning and that stuff, I will mention that later in this webinar, but all the hardcore stuff in respect to regarding typography is not actually covered in this webinar, so don't be disappointed. So yeah, let's get started. In the beginning there is the document properties window, which you can access by opening a new document. You can also type Ctrl-N on your keyboard, and the best settings for creating your fonts, or to prepare your document for creating a fonts, is when you switch over to use points as units, which you can do here. No, that is the size actually. Here you can access the document units. We will change that to points, and the width can be or should be changed to 750 points in square, and that's actually pretty much all. The primary color mode doesn't need to be changed, and neither the rendering resolution, so we can let these settings be like they are. So when we hit OK, then we have a new document. I will skip that here because I already did that. And the first thing I used to do when setting up a document for creating a font is putting some guidelines on my document, and I'm going to show you which guidelines I use. And this is at first for, where are they? Okay, they are right here. If you have several pages like I have in this presentation, it can get a bit confusing, so please don't mind. The first guidelines I set up usually are the one for the origins of my font, which are one for the vertical left side and one for the baseline, and where both meet, this is the origin of my font. Then I go over to put some lowercase guidelines in there. And what you have to keep in mind is that straight letters, no matter if they are lowercase or uppercase, straight letters are a bit different from rounded letters, because you have to take the negative space into account. So we need to compensate that. In first case visually, and we can do that by putting an additional side bearing on the right and on the left. You can see that here in the circles. This is the side bearing, so the O in this case is actually a bit wider than the X, and that is because to compensate yeah, the negative space up here and down here. So the same applies to the top and bottom. So it's a little bit taller than my X, and this is the overshoot. It's named like this. So yeah, maybe if there are some typographers among you, this might sound similar. So I think this is pretty much clear. Here you can see the overshoot a little bit better. This is my X width, so the actual width of my straight letters, and the X height represents the height of my lowercase letters. So let's get over to the uppercase letters. Okay, that's a little bit too confusing. That's much better. There we have different widths in our uppercase letters. The widest are the M, for example. If you don't have a monospace font, then it's most likely the M. There you have an uppercase O, and the same applies to here. As I already said, you have some negative space here, and of course in the center, so you have to compensate that visually by yeah, enlarging it in the width and in the height. And yeah, I think this gets clear as well. Additional guidelines are used for the accent height. So in many European languages, for example, we have accents, like in the French language, and you also have yeah, descenders. For example, for the G, the lowercase g and the lowercase y, and you also have an ascender height, which is the difference from lowercase to uppercase. So yeah, that's pretty much all guidelines I use for setting up my fonts. And yeah, now I'm going to show you how I create my lettering. And this can be done by different yeah, tools. The tool I like to use for yeah, for straight lettering is the outline tool. So let's put our, okay, I should set that to invisible. It's better to visualize, I think. So here are a couple of examples how I use the outlines on different characters, and this is actually the yeah, the default setting. The outline was set to 50 points in outline width. Let me show you. Okay, I have to unlock the object first. These are the outline settings where you can set the properties. So as you can see here, the outline width 50 point. Maybe you could use the dotted style. This might give a curious effect. Well, it doesn't look that good, so let's keep the straight line. Yeah, regarding the outline, you can choose to set the corners to hard edge or rounded edge, and the same to the line cap, so to the end of the lines. And you could also put some serifs in there. Serifs, I don't know if that is spelled right. Okay, yeah, you can choose to have rounded edges, like here at the L or uppercase Y, I. Don't know what this actually is. So yeah, to get an effect like yeah, calligraphy, like calligraphy drawn character or something like that, you can use the calligraphy settings in the outline settings as well. So if you stretch, let's set that to round, then we can see it a little bit better. So we could dial up something like this to make it more narrow. Then we can adjust the angle to represent kind of yeah, calligraphy stroke, and that's pretty cool actually to use it for yeah, fonts like calligraphy fonts. Okay, the next one is, here you can see the difference between straight end cap and rounded end cap, and this is actually only a straight line, but I've managed to apply yeah, kind of serifs in here, and you can do that by choosing arrows at the line caps. So if you dial up, if you click on this little triangle here pointing down, then you have the ability to, then you are able to choose many different arrow ends. I normally use this one for serifs, and the same at the other side. So this is working pretty much yeah, pretty good. So here you can adjust the options under edit. You can set the length, the width, and if it should be proportional. Yeah, I think this is obvious. So let's get over to another technique I use. Let me set that to, let me lock that first so I can make the outline layer invisible. A tool I use also for, yeah, you might see now it's obvious, for kind of artistic fonts or hand-drawn looking fonts, is the artistic media brush. Works very well with creating fonts, as you can see here with this O. It's actually only a circle broken up or converted to lines, no, converted to curves, okay. And then the upper nodes were broken up, so I can manage to apply an artistic media stroke here. Artistic media stroke you can access by pressing the letter I, and you can apply artistic media strokes to any kind of curve actually. So this is the same artistic media stroke applied to a straight line, to a straight vertical line. Another artistic media brush applied to the same straight vertical line. So yeah, I think this makes sense. Okay, what I also use for very difficult and complex fonts are patterns, and they most likely look similar to this. So I break up repeating patterns which I use, which repeat in the fonts. For example, you have the A, and you can use the curve for from the A. If you mirror it for the B or for the D, for the O in some cases. So yeah, I separate my my lines, for different patterns to apply them later, or to assemble characters out of these patterns. And CorelDRAW is pretty much cool in using patterns, because you can use patterns as symbols, and that's the next thing I want to show you. Artistic media patterns. Oh, there was something I almost forgot to say. Another very important tool is the Bezier spline tool. It's very cool to use it on fonts, because the Bezier spline works like yeah, putting some points somewhere, and the curve gets interpolated between these points you've set. Let me show that. Yeah, pretty much like this. So here you can move the points, and the curve gets adjusted according to the position of the points, and you can do a very yeah, free form fonts. For example, here is kind of a Y. This is made of two Bezier curves, or Bezier spline curves, and yeah, I think you get the idea. So you can get very creative on using different tools, and that is what makes CorelDRAW so good when it comes to creating your own fonts. So what I said about the patterns, here they are. You can save them as symbols, and yeah, symbols. Symbols. Let me show that to you. I think this makes more clear when I'm talking about patterns. So when you want to set a pattern as symbol, the advantage of using symbols is actually you use a pattern once, and the symbol is virtually copied or duplicated, but it doesn't increase the file size. And anytime you have the ability to adjust the size, you can skew it, you can rotate it, you can mirror it. So to set a pattern as a symbol, you right click on the pattern and just go down to the context menu. At the bottom you will find symbol, and then you say new symbol. Let's say this is pattern 1, and you hit OK, and you have a symbol. Okay, landed on my guidelines layer, but anyway, now you can open up the symbol manager Docker, which you can find under Window, Dockers, and where is it here? Also by hitting Control F3 on your keyboard. There we have our pattern 1, and on every page or every character where I'm going to use this pattern, for example, if I turn that slightly, I probably could use that for a B. Yeah, maybe it should be skewed a little bit. Okay. Yeah, this is actually quite distorted, but I think you get the idea. So anyway, let's head over to how I use pages for setting up different characters, and I have to switch to an already prepared document which I have used for creating a fonts actually. And as you can see here down below, the pages are named as the letter itself. The page 1 is letter A, the page 2 is letter B, and so on and so on. So in this document I have 167 characters, different characters, so signs, numbers, and characters in general. It covers the basic Latin subset and parts of the Latin subset 2 and 3 as well, or 1 and 2, I don't remember actually. So the Latin subsets are meant for if you have to use accents, and yeah, let me show that. I think, yeah, here you can see I have this accent which is used in the Swedish language. I could be wrong, please don't mind, but I think you know what I mean. So yeah, this is the typical German A. So yeah, to work with a document which has so many pages can be quite difficult, but there's a great tool to handle that. You go to the where is it? View, to the menu View, then to the Page Sorter view, and here you can yeah, control if your fonts is set up accordingly. You can copy patterns from here to, yeah, let's say over here or down below. That makes using with the fonts, using the pages for the characters much more easy. You can copy and paste from here to there and delete pages, add pages by right clicking here, insert page, duplicate page, and so on and so on. So this is gives a nice overview over your font. And yeah, I think we can switch over to the export, and you can export your fonts by going to export or Control and E, and if I want to put that on my desktop, yeah, I go over here. The file type is TTF for True Type Font, and if you export your, where has it gone? So if you export your font as TTF, you are prompted with the options. Here you can put in a family name. The family name is the name of the whole fonts in general. So if you're planning to create some derivatives, some alternatives for different font weights and stuff like that, or italic fonts, then they all have the same family name in common. So just to say that, most likely I keep these settings because yeah, it's pretty okay. With a leading, you can adjust how far away the font is from the left edge. This will not be a symbol font, and here you can set if it should be bold, italic, if you have a bold and italic font weight. This is a normal font, so the style should remain normal. This is the family name for my font. I hit OK, and then I'm prompted with this nice window, and here is where all the magic applies. So it starts actually with the first letter, or you should enable the first page, sorry for that, should enable for the first page. Select your character and then go over here and select according to that the lowercase a, and here is what you can what I've mentioned earlier, the basic Latin subset, and here you have the Latin 1 subset, and here you can see here's all the stuff with accents and these things. So yeah, design size should be the document size, so 750 points is okay. These are the document units. Baseline is also okay, and once I've chosen my lowercase a, which actually should appear here, but I'm still in the page sort of view, so because of that it doesn't appear here. And once I've selected my A and hit OK, then I have a TTF font exported with one character, and that is the A. So in order to let me switch back. In order to export the B into the same file, I do an export again, selecting the same file, and it becomes, yeah, I should again type the name in here, and yeah, it adds the B to the same file I used before. So to do that for 167 characters can be quite demanding, to export every character. So I want to show you in this webinar, the first time ever, how you can use macros for automating stuff. So yay, great Premiere. Let's go over to Tools, Macros, and let's start recording one. I think this is the best way to show you how capable macros are. We put them into the global macros pile. Macro 1 is okay. And so now CorelDRAW is recording whatever we are doing, and since we want to export our fonts, we hit export, type the family name in here and hit OK. Yeah, we want, it's actually B, OK, and we're done. This is pretty much all which we have to record. So let's stop the recording and then let's take a look what we actually have recorded. We switch over to the macro editor. You could also hit Alt F11 on your keyboard, and the macro editor opens. There we have to select our global macros, and we go into modules and recorded macros, and there we should have, by double clicking on it, we should have our recorded one, which is this one. And I will shortly explain what that stuff means. So here we have a declaration for variable, which is named org selection, and every variable has a type, and in this case it's a shape range. So it's declared here, and it doesn't it's not anything to declare a variable. We also have to set it. So we have to apply something in our document to the variable, in this case org selection, and what we're going to say that our active selection range of objects is this variable. So the next thing that has to be declared is the structure export options. And since we are dealing with OP language, so object-oriented language, which VBA is, these naming conventions, the namespace is actually pretty much obvious, I think. So the variable is named xpopt for export options, and the same here, we have to set our export options by creating some, and we also have an export filter, and we're going to set this export filter, and here we have to put in our stuff for exporting our font. The name is this one with a path where we are about to save it. This is the type of the file we are exporting. This is what we are actually exporting. If we want to export all pages in our document, this is the right selection. You could also export a selection you've made, and to finish the export, or to say how the export should be handled, we apply our variable p opt with the structural export options. So this sounds very confusing, but actually is pretty simple. I've managed to put together a working example. So here are all my declarations, the structural export options, the export filter, and all these are applied to the according to the right variable. And we also have a p for page. P is our variable, page is the type of the variable, the D is document, S is shape, as R as shape, as new shape range, and I think this is obvious. So we are going to set our structure options by creating some. We necessarily don't need to use the color profile. I set that to yes, I don't know why. And now the magic starts. We have to, or what I have in mind is going through the document page by page, one page at a time, and I want to export each page in the same file. So at first I have to go through each page in my opened document. This is done by the active document, and this is a sub-object of document. Pages belongs to a document, so this is expressed by a point. Yeah, p is the variable for page. Sorry, not peach. You can eat peaches as many as you want, but that doesn't belong here. So I'm sorry, I'm joking here all the time. I hope you have fun. So anyway, let's get over. While we are going through all our pages, each page is represented by our variable p. And in order to export this page, we have to activate it. This is pretty much like you would select the page in the document. And we have to clear our shape range at first to use it, or to say it the other way, I like to clear a shape range if it has existed, because if you have a selection, if you have made a selection in your document, this could be set as a shape range. So in order to avoid that this selection is used as a shape range by accident, I set that to nothing. Then I have to check if all objects on my page are meant to be exported or can be exported. You can't export guidelines, so I have to exclude them, or I do it the other way. I select all my objects which are curve shapes, and I can do that by walking through all the shapes on my page, finding all shapes which are curve shapes. I think this is obvious. And when I when this macro step stumbles upon a curve shape, then it adds this shape which is contained in the variable s to my shape range. So saying shape range add shape s. Then we head over to the next shape, and so on and so on. So if this loop has finished, I have a selection with all shapes which are meant to be exported. Then I have to set my export filter, which is the TTF filter. This is the name from another document, but that's not that bad. This is our file type, TTF, true type fonts, and we want to export our selection, which we have created earlier with this loop, and we apply the export options last. Then we have to finish the export and head over to the next page. I'm going to show you how this works in reality. So I'm putting my cursor up here. You can also select this this macro sub. It's called sub. I don't know what this means. There are functions and subs and stuff like that, and I think it will cover more deeply webinar when it comes to explaining this stuff, so please don't mind me. Yeah, if you put your cursor right here and you have your document, let's switch to page 1, then you press play, and this macro will go through all the pages, exporting one character by one. And this is a real massive time saver, because when you have this macro running, don't want to make that now actually, because it would run through all my 167 pages. So what pretty much happens is the export dialog opens, the window with the advanced options for exporting the TTF fonts, and all you have to do actually is selecting your character according to the page you have currently active, and you only have to select the character as you need. So this with 167 pages, this would take, I think, 3, 4, 5 minutes by running this macro. So a real massive time saver. But you could do a lot more with macros. For example, you could, if you want to extend your fonts or condense it, when you have used outlines, for example, then it's actually a little bit difficult to widen the character or to narrow it down. When you skew it, then you have a wider vertical thickness in your character, than the horizontal thickness. So in order to skew it accordingly, I created this macro, which is similar to the upper one. Let me explain that really short. So again, we're setting our this is not needed here. We don't have to export it. The color profile can be deleted too. Sorry, it was a bit lumpy here. So I set my document, and in order to skew the character right, I have to set a reference point. D is my document, so I'm setting the reference point to bottom left. And again, I go through each page, activate it, set my my current selection to nothing, and for each shape on my page, I add the shape to the selection. Then I head over and stretch the whole selection. So actually, the whole time I talked about skewing. That's not right. It's stretching. Sorry, it was a confusion in terms. Yeah, I have to stretch the selection, and this is yeah, some maths to stretch it. I take the width of the current selection and I add the width sized up by 0.2. This here represents the X stretch, so the horizontal stretch, and since we don't need to stretch it vertically, this is set to 0. And then we head over to the next page, and so on and so on. And yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say to macros. So if you are about to create a fonts, it's really helpful to dive a little bit deeper in macros, because especially in creating fonts, they can be very usable and a real time saver. So yeah, that's pretty much everything regarding fonts, regarding macros. Yeah, let me show you a font, a really freaky font I created a long time ago. So you are not restricted to make the common stuff like yeah, serif fonts and monotype fonts and Gothic fonts and all this stuff. You could also do some distorted freeform techno style. You could also use symbols as well in fonts, so there's no restriction for your creativity. Okay, didn't change the B yet. So here's the C, D, and so on. These are only 48 characters. I don't know why. Maybe I was too lazy to complete that font, but I think you get an idea how creative you can get with your fonts, and there are really no restriction. So we are quite finished with our webinar. One thing to say at last, if you're about to dive deeper in creating fonts and you want to get into font kerning and stuff like that, then I suggest you a program which is named FontForge. It's open source, so you can get it for free. I use it a lot with my fonts in conjunction with CorelDRAW, because CorelDRAW can export fonts, but it is quite difficult to kern the characters yeah, in a working manner. So you can make some very basic kerning by yeah, moving the characters around and yeah, setting a fixed distance from the left side. So if you really want to get into font kerning, FontForge is really good for it, and I use it also for exporting TrueType fonts into OpenType or symbol fonts or Mac fonts, whatever. It's very, very versatile, and yeah, the name is Font and Forge. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. Yeah, I thank you for watching. I hope it was funny and helpful. And yeah, maybe you I will see some very cool fonts created with CorelDRAW in the future. Let me see, let me know. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye bye.